latest edition of ESPN FC Live. We're with you 3 times a week here on our YouTube channel. Joining me, Kay Murray, today we have Ryan O'Hanlon and Janusz Mihajlik as well. We're going to be talking about the Premier League title race, don't we always? And we'll also be looking ahead to a big weekend with El Classico hitting the calendar. Then we've got some quick fire questions for Janusz to answer later in the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Let's get started, guys. Janusz, let me start with you. Slip-ups for both Arsenal and Liverpool at the weekend. City once again showing that when it comes to the business end of the season, it is usually things going their way. So what did you make of Arsenal's result in particular? That's where I want to start today.
Well, they panicked, right? I mean, look, I don't struggle because I remember as a player, but we struggle, right? Not knowing what's happening on the inside of any club around the world when we talk about this, and you have to give us opinions. We struggle with what, how to define pressure, right? Because you don't know. We know it's a pressure situation because you have 3 clubs fighting for the Premier League title, which hasn't happened in such a long time. And you could have made a case ahead of this weekend or throughout the season that all 3 had a chance, right? But that ended this past weekend, and you could see that in the first leg. I think there was a realization. I think Arsenal knew that they had to beat Villa. They knew it was going to be very difficult with Unai Emery coming back to his old club and with the season that they've had so far. They knew it was going to be fairly open. But I think, once that Trossard chance went away and it became a grind and a struggle, I think there was a moment of panic. And after the 2 quick goals, especially the second one, you could visibly see there was a capitulation of not even being able to respond in any way in that game. In a game where I thought Arsenal would dominate, right? I mean, you look at the center of the pitch and Boubacar Kamara and Douglas Luiz, 2 key players I felt ahead of the games for Aston Villa, and the way Arsenal play in the midfield were not even there. And that didn't make a difference. So, if I could guess, that's how you define pressure. They definitely felt it, and that's that. It's probably over for Arsenal.
Ooh, would you agree with that, Ryan?
That it's over?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think part of the thing with this title race is that at least I don't think that this is a Manchester City team that is at the same level of the Manchester City team of seasons past, where we should just assume that they're going to go on like a Terminator style run and win from here on out. I think that's evidenced by the fact that like Arsenal have a significantly better goal difference still than Manchester City. I think you even saw it when Liverpool played Manchester City a couple weeks ago, and Liverpool like completely dominated the game in a way that they'd never have against Manchester City. So I think while yes, Liverpool and Arsenal both drop points and City easily beat Luton, and it sort of feels like same old. I think that like I would be surprised at least if Manchester City run the table from here on out, and if they drop points, that means Arsenal both have a chance.
Oof. Can I push back a little bit, Ryan? You don't mind, do you? I mean, I hear you that it's not the same team, and you mentioned a goal difference, but I just imagine what's going to happen now where that carrot, now it's all there. I suspect that Real Madrid is going to, I don't want to say that because I'll regret it, but easily will beat Real Madrid again, which that in itself, that sort of a momentum is going to propel them. This is a Manchester City now that knows that what it matters is now, not the goal difference. What matters is where they are, what's at stake. They have everybody healthy. I mean, there's just to talk about Kyle Walker, who's ready for the game. I think Pep Guardiola said today that he's not sure if he's going to go from the start or if he's going to go, but he's going to be ready. Everybody's healthy, right? I mean, even that game away to Real Madrid, you have De Bruyne falling out of the lineup in the dressing room. Still 3-3. They've dominated Real Madrid last season. So I don't want to make this about Champions League, but I'm looking at this and some of the biggest things that we've talked about. Why Arsenal lost, and we didn't get to it, as part of it was lack of depth, right? I mean, you could see it in the second half. Maybe we bring it all the way around that. I can understand why Trossard maybe got a run in because he deserved it. But if I look at the key goals that he scored against Porto and against Bayern Munich and even against Brighton, right, coming off the bench, you saw in the second half when really Arsenal were on their knees a little bit. I'm talking about in terms of physicality. Who's coming off that bench? Kay, we've had this Nketiah thing. Remember, I never believed in him too much. Not that he's not a good player, but I mean, Martinelli hasn't been at his best. So I mean, it's a miscalculation, I think, on Arteta's part. And I look at Manchester City and look at this. I mean, their best starting 11. I look on the bench and how, even if we think they're not as good as last year, they're certainly good enough to win that league and run the table. So I just don't know. I think the best is yet to come when it comes to Manchester City, at least in the Premier League.
So, Janusz, what's the difference between a miscalculation for Mikel Arteta and lack of depth in his squad?
Well, I mean, we've talked about it the whole time, but Arsenal proved it. And, it's a funny thing because, if you look at Arsenal, say, in comparison to Liverpool or maybe some other teams, Manchester City to a degree as well, I mean, they've stayed relatively healthy, haven't they, right, throughout the season. And he was playing very often this pretty same lineup for how long? And, sometimes you pay the price for that. And here, drop of Martinelli, we all know. I mean, look, Arsenal and Liverpool have the same problem also, not just, Liverpool doesn't have a problem in depth. Their problem is, which we'll hopefully get to it, is some key players not being at their best and some injuries still at a difficult time, but they don't have a consistent number 9. That's the issue for both. So for Arsenal, lack of depth and continuously, an issue with maybe the special player that kind of delivers in games like these. So lack of depth for sure. I can't push back on that, but I just, in that game against Villa, there was nobody that you felt comfortable coming off the bench where you say, wow, this player is going to change the game.
Janusz, let me stick with you because we're going to go to Ryan about Liverpool in a minute. It's actually the topic of his latest article and what's ahead for them. But when you talk about that game, why didn't he play Havertz up top where he has had success with him? This was one of the topics on FC this week. That was something that was questioned by the panel. What were your thoughts on that?
The only thing I can explain it is that sometimes managers feel like players need to get rewarded, right? And if you look at the game against Bayern Munich, remember that second half, right? Gabriel Jesus and Trossard changed the game. The assist and the goal from Gabriel Jesus, the assist was maybe better than, not maybe, for sure was better than the finish. But as I said, Trossard coming off the bench, 3 goals very, very recently, right? When you talk, Champions League for sure, and Brighton was a couple of weeks ago as well. So sometimes you just kind of, you say to yourself, well, how often can I not give them that chance? Because you know what managers do. Yeah. If you play well, if you train well, you're going to get that opportunity. These players want to be in the starting lineup. So he caved into that, even though Kai Havertz has been very good as of late as a number 9. I don't want to put this loss down to that because, as I've said, I think if Trossard puts that away, the psychology of the game changes dramatically. But those are the moments. That's what decides titles like this. We've talked about Liverpool, Manchester City, that 1-point game. Nobody's going to sit there and say Liverpool we're not deserving that season. It was either or, and it turned out to be 98, 97 points. That's the difference sometimes. But yeah, you could question that certainly. I'd be careful because I just saw a team that was tired. I saw Declan Rice, who in the last couple of games was making massive mistakes. In this game's on the far post. If you look deeper, I'm trying to remember against Bayern Munich, it was the first or second goal where he was played behind by Leroy Sané. Goretzka got behind him, and he saw it coming, by the way, and he couldn't get there. I watched that closely because I was so surprised. It's kind of, I don't want to say lack of effort because he never shows that, but just I think he was at his depths, and he's been wonderful, but that's what happens, lack of depth.
So Ryan, let's get to Liverpool because you seem a little bit more confident in Arsenal right now and what's ahead for them, because your latest article is not so favourable for Liverpool's chances of winning the title. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say, but I think I want to, despite what I said earlier, Manchester City are significant favourites to win. But I don't think that it's a foregone conclusion in the way that it seems to have sort of overtaken the larger soccer discourse that they're just going to win out and win everything. But I think the article I wrote about Liverpool it's a little harsher, I guess, because Liverpool had finally kind of separated themselves by a handful of points at the top of the table. Were finally the favorites to win the league. They were heavy favorites to win Europa League, and then they drew with Manchester City at Old Trafford, got absolutely destroyed by Atalanta, and then lost at home to Crystal Palace. So I think with Liverpool, it's a little more cascading. You go from being favorites in two competitions to being favorites in neither. So I think that's just kind of a quicker turnaround, I guess, for them. So that's why I wrote about them. And I think, I don't know, we're talking about Arsenal. I think we saw against Villa, like Arsenal's, the question with them is all season has been, can they create enough chances? And I think in the second half of that game, they struggled to create chances. While in the past 3 games for Liverpool, the 2 questions are, can they finish their chances? And 2, do they control games enough? They just don't. The bet that the Klopp makes with Liverpool is we don't need to control games. We're better off not trying to control games, because we're going to create just tons of chances on the attacking end. We're going to score. And then Van Dijk and Konate and whatever third person is hanging back to defend counterattacks are going to deal with all the attacks into the box. And so I think with Liverpool, I honestly think the Man U game was sort of a complete freak result that they win, I don't know, 85 times out of 100. Atalanta, they deserve to lose. And then Palace, they came out slow, but also created an absurd number of chances, but just didn't turn them into goals. So sort of everything, all of Liverpool's weaknesses kind of came together. Plus, I think bad luck, bad finishing, whatever you want to call it, to take them from, oh wait, we could win a treble, to now it's unlikely that we win another trophy.
What's your order, Ryan, right now of how it's going to finish 1, 2, 3 in the table?
I think it'll stay how it is. That's the most boring answer possible. I think that's the most likely outcome. But I guess what I will say is I think there will be shuffling. I don't think it's just going to stay how it is from here on out. I think if I had to bet, I would bet on City to, I mean, not considering the odds, but I think City are most likely to win. Then Arsenal just have a large goal difference advantage on Liverpool. Their schedules are, to me, not that different in level of difficulty from here on out. But I do think that, like, we saw Arsenal and Liverpool drop points in games where I don't think either team was that bad. Arsenal easily could have been winning by multiple goals at halftime. Liverpool could have scored 3 goals, 4 goals against Crystal Palace. They just didn't. And that's how soccer goes. And I think Manchester City are probably going to get caught in a couple of those games from here on out too. It's just a question of, can Liverpool and Arsenal avoid slipping up from here on out?
So what happened to Liverpool in your opinion, Yanis?
Yeah, they picked the wrong time to be wasteful, right? It all came to a head. And again, I'll continue to say that. Now, being in the situation that they've been, you can call it a little bit of a choke, right? Because once you get there, you better finish it. And now sometimes you have a team that you know deep down that you're not really sure why they're up there. But Liverpool is good enough. And that's why I think I maybe, if I had to bet, I would say that Liverpool will finish ahead of Arsenal. I just think that schedule is much, much more difficult. If I look at Arsenal still having to play Chelsea, Spurs, and Man United, remember, the air came out of Liverpool. Now the expectations for them is not to win it. I doubt that they're going to finish this season for Jurgen Klopp in the manner that we've seen in the last 3 games. So all of a sudden, when I worried about had things were equal and say Liverpool, didn't lose, away games to Fulham, Everton, and West Ham look differently than they look to me now, because the expectation isn't for Liverpool to win it. And by virtue of that, I think their schedule is easier than Arsenal. I also think that getting players like Alisson, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Diogo Jota back, speaking of lack of depth for Arsenal, I think clearly, in my opinion, it's a better squad overall than Arsenal. So I think that Liverpool may push it here, because I'm telling you, I think they know if you come to training and you see how much it means for Jurgen Klopp and how much it means to the supporters, and I just think that this is going to be a different Liverpool we're going to see. I'm not so sure with Atalanta. We've seen that happen, but 3-0, that's a difficult one. But I think when it comes to Premier League, you see it. The bottom line is, because you asked me about Liverpool, Darwin Núñez, we've been here before. He works hard, he scores, but the worst in terms of their big chance conversion in top 5 in Europe. 11 goals in the Premier League, 11 goals on 103 shots, and we've seen that. So if he does come around and score a goal or 2, you always wonder how meaningful those goals may be. But I think in a run-in like this, where with Manchester City having everybody available and everybody capable of scoring from just about everywhere, right? I mean, look at Joško Gvardiol. He's scoring for fun, Champions League and Premier League now. Maybe he's not the best example. I just have a feeling, Luis Diaz jittery, and you have Mo Salah, who's picked the worst time not to be scoring. Obviously, he's had some injuries, hasn't had the consistency that he normally has, where he plays from first whistle until the last. So I think that's an easy pick right there, because they've created enough chances in all those games that we've mentioned.
Before we let you go, Ryan, if City are to go on and do it, it will be a 4-peat. It will be 6 in the last 7 years. Some praise if they are to go on and do that for everything we've seen from City over these last 5 or so years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to point out too that they're doing it at a time where, like, the relegation level teams in the Premier League are signing players from like the best teams in Serie A and the Bundesliga. So I think in a lot of ways, like, the Premier League is more competitive than it's ever been. The big six have more money than ever before. The mid-table, as we're seeing with Villa this year, as we've seen with Brighton recently, are better than ever before. So City are doing all of that at a time where, like, the level of play, I think, at the bottom of the league is higher than it's ever been before. So I think that it might even undersell kind of how impressive of a run it is. At the same time, I would be remiss to not point out that there are over 100 financial charges that are being looked at by the league. So at the same time, we know City have more resources than anyone in the league on paper. We also don't know sort of exactly what resources were used to build these teams overall. So it's an unfortunate thing to have to point out. And it's kind of becoming a growing reality in the Premier League, where we don't actually know what's going on with any of the teams in the league. But yeah, I mean, they're just the best English soccer team of all time. Like, I don't really think it's even arguable.
Ryan, it's great to have you on as always. Make sure, if you are an ESPN Plus subscriber, you do get your exclusive content. Ryan's latest article, How and Why Liverpool's Premier League and Europa League quest is falling apart. Thanks so much for being with us, Ryan. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Good man, Ryan.
All right, Yanis, time to talk El Clasico, because that is coming up on Sunday. Real Madrid against Barcelona. You can catch it on ESPN Deportes and ESPN Plus. Wow, Real Madrid 8 points clear. Any chance of a turnaround if Barcelona were to win it this weekend, Yanis? No. I mean, look, they can make it interesting, right? I mean, with the momentum that Barcelona are having right now, and we'll see about momentum going both ways, right? Because this midweek, there's some massive matches for Real Madrid against Manchester City. Obviously, Barcelona winning away at PSG. So, I mean, wins by both, in my opinion, as a player, changes things, right? Because those would have been massive wins over big teams, and a possibility of a great trophy that's Champions League, right? So, because you're talking about semifinal, but I think you're talking about 8 points even with a win. I mean, even if Barcelona win, what was the first game? 4-1, right? I mean, the head-to-head is very important. I don't know if Barcelona can replicate that against Real Madrid, even though they are at home. So I think that's going to be difficult from that standpoint. I also look at the schedule, and not that anything's easy, but Real Sociedad away. That's going to be a big one, because if Barcelona were to win, Real Madrid goes away to Real Sociedad. And although we do know that Real Sociedad is not the Sociedad that we've seen, say, early in the season when they were winning their group in the Champions League, but it's a difficult ground, so who knows? But I think Real Sociedad and maybe Villarreal away for Real Madrid, where I look at Valencia, Girona, Sevilla, a little bit more difficult. I think it's going to be too big of an ask for Barcelona, even if they win the El Clasico. Has Barcelona's upturning fortunes got anything to do with Xavi saying he was going and pressure being lifted?
I think so. I think it helps. I mean, look, I was thinking the other way. We could have two teams in the final, Bayern Munich and Barcelona, with two managers that walked away, or they were fired, or they knew they were going to be fired, whatever the case. So it just goes to show. I think, especially, and you would know that, Cabe, even better than I do, but there's probably, a million articles in every paper and magazine coming out about these things. The pressure seems to me even maybe bigger than the one in England, right? When it comes to that, and taking the pressure off the players, and knowing that if that had continued before Xavi had announced it, I think he would have been fired by now, probably. Players react to it sometimes in sympathy to the manager, sometimes because they understand that there's going to be an unknown person coming in, and they want to, obviously show themselves well and impress. So I think that helped. I really do. And obviously you're getting some players and some results and all of that, but it helped, no doubt.
Do you think the Classico is starting to build up to the glory days once again with the star names, especially with some of these youngsters coming through, the likes of Pedri and Gavi and Jude Bellingham, like all these names that we're seeing now, Vinny, Rodrigo? Do you think we're going to start to see those big name, big kind of billing Classicos? Obviously, it's always a fixture that the world stops for to watch, but some years it might not have felt as big as others.
No, well, we're going to have to wait. I think there's a possibility. I mean, throughout the years, we've seen some great players for both Real Madrid and Barcelona. I just think that our generation is always thinking about Messi and Ronaldo, but rightfully so, because I think, even in the past, there were some great, players, competitive teams and all that. I think the fact that at that particular time, it wasn't just about Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, but it was also about Jose Mourinho and Pep Guardiola. That show on the sideline was arguably as big, if not bigger sometimes, right? Because they set the narrative. They didn't love each other at the time. I don't care what they say now. The clubs never liked each other. The supporters never liked each other. So, I mean, I think you have a perfect situation in those years where I think we're going to have to wait a little bit for that to reoccur, especially because aside from Ancelotti, who we think is going to be there, right? We don't know who's going to be the replacement for Xavi. So let's not put pressure on some of these young players to be all of a sudden the Messis of the world and the Ronaldos of the world. But, the Galacticos are there. And if Kylian Mbappe comes in there, I mean, there's going to be a time where Barcelona is going to have to answer that. So I think there's enough talent that we can maybe dream of that. But I think that's a long ways away. I think we're going to see some great matches, but I don't know if the narrative of the two managers of the past and the likes of, Xavi, Iniesta, and Messi and Ronaldo and everybody else, that's hard in the near future.
Yes, if I may cross-promote just a little bit, keep your eye on La Liga's socials this week. We've actually revisited some of the big-name Clásicos over the years and remembered them and talked about them, and that will be on La Liga's socials all week. But it is time for our quick-fire question, Janice. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right. Number one, Mikel Arteta will not win the Premier League with Arsenal, period.
I'm going to push back. I think I'm going to say yes, because he's showing the progress that, that I've seen. I mean, I have no reason to say no, but, just based on what I've seen and how much he loves the club, is the way him and Edu get together. I think there's something good. Liverpool had to learn how to be champions as well. They came close. This reminds me a little bit of that. So I'm going to stay positive here and say yes, of course, if he stays with Arsenal.
Okay, so that's a positive one, that Arsenal will actually win the Premier League under Mikel Arteta, but according to Janusz, pretty much all season, not this season. All right, next. Harry Kane made a mistake going to Bayern.
Nonsense. It's a great move. He's proven that he's scoring goals left and right, just as he did in the Premier League. It's crazy, unfortunate that, well, who knows? There's still a trophy left for him to win it, but I think we all expected him to have a trophy by now. That's for sure. That's going to come next year. No questions about that. He's going to benefit from moving abroad, and I think his family will benefit from it, which we never talk about, right? Different culture and all that. Maybe England benefits from that in the European Championships. I think it's absolute nonsense. He's at, he certainly is at one of the biggest clubs in the world's history, and he's going to be a big part of this history when it's all said and done.
Bayer Leverkusen will win the Bundesliga again next season.
Oof. I wish them all the best. I like Xabi Alonso. You and I were involved in them clinching for 120 years. They had to wait, and they did it in style against Werder Bremen. It's a tough one because you know what happens when Bayern Munich don't win the title, and I'm afraid that they're going to reload the way they always do, and you're going to see a different one. So it's going to be close. I think they're going to be up for it. I never fare well when I go against Bayern Munich, so I'm going to say no. They're not going to repeat it next year.
Oh, but how many horses will be in the race, do you think, next year to the final stages?
I think it's going to be very tight. Borussia Dortmund, they're about, I was surprised because this year I thought actually that Leipzig were going to be the biggest ones. I mean, I look at their squad, it's very, very good. Some of the players that maybe needed that one season to bet in will get better. They'll probably get some players. So I think Leipzig's going to be there. And my goodness, I mean, Stuttgart, if they can keep, Stuttgart kind of reminds me of a little bit of Leverkusen, right? I mean, many out there will tell, and, part of me thinks that, I mean, Stuttgart, it's crazy to say, but there's been some games that I think Stuttgart has played even more exciting football than Leverkusen. And I think you know that, right, Kay?
Yes. I've been saying all season, Janis, that if it weren't for what Leverkusen did, I think we'd be talking even more about Stuttgart.
We don't talk about enough the way they play because we just make an assumption that this Leverkusen unbeaten run, not just in the Bundesliga and everywhere else. I wish you go, some of our listeners or viewers go back and watch the way Stuttgart plays. So I think if that project stays intact, I think Stuttgart right up there, right? That's why I just don't know if Leverkusen can just look at Bayern Munich and say, well, this is our rival. I think Stuttgart's going to push on, maybe look at Leverkusen and say, that's us next season. And I think Leipzig will have a say as normal, and so Dortmund. I think next season in the Bundesliga is going to be sensational. This one was for a number of reasons, but next year, my goodness, I may just watch Bundesliga and that's it.
You should, on ESPN Plus in both English and in Spanish.
Maybe I'll get to commentate one or two.
All season. Yeah, a great commentary at the weekend from you too, Janis. Last quick fire question for you, and you've already half alluded to it a little earlier on. Barcelona will make the Champions League final.
Gut feeling says yes. I would never say that before. I think, the brackets have something to do. And of course, I was trying to remember. Remind me, who are they? I mean, it's the easier bracket. Yeah. I mean, it'd be criminal. It'd be criminal not to see this through against PSG. Not, of course, it's not going to be easy at home, but obviously, hard work was done in Paris. I just
Dortmund and Atleti.
Just gut feeling that, with everything that has gone in Barcelona ahead of the season, during the season, the money issues, the Xavi issues, the Robert Lewandowski not doing enough, but now he's now Pedri's coming back, Gavi's not far away. Everybody's kind of coming together. Certainly the talent is there. They're very, very young and inexperienced to some degree in some spots right now. But gut feeling tells me that they could be. Why not?
Why not? Well, we'll definitely know more about that next week. But thank you so much for being with us on the latest edition of the show. Don't forget, we are with you 3 times a week, Tuesday, Wednesdays and Fridays. And this is the weekend you've got to look forward to on ESPN Plus. We have the FA Cup semi-finals, both of them, Man City and Chelsea, and Coventry City against Manchester United. Then on ESPN Plus and ESPN2, we have Borussia Dortmund taking on the new champions, Leverkusen. Dortmund need to get back into the top 4. They'll also want to be the team to bring that unbeaten run to an end for Xabi Alonso's men. Be sure to be with us for that. And of course, La Liga. How can you miss it? El Clasico, Real Madrid against Barcelona, 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus and ESPN Deportes. We hope to see you there. And we always love having to see you every single week right here on ESPN FC Live.